Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast. Everything that's weird. We're your host. I'm Anthony, and I'm here with Brandon. And tonight, we're talking about Alaskan Squatch. Portlock, Alaska.
Non-Tanuk.
I was wondering how to say that.
I had to look it up.
So, my brother has a boat, and it's a ski nautique, but it is not pronounced the same way.
It's the same thing. You just got to put your pinky in the air.
So Portlock, Alaska. It is an abandoned town on the coast of Alaska, and it's sort of
The set of Scooby-Doo.
It is big time.
Yeah.
It's down by where the Aleutian Islands trail out, but it's way more inland than those. But it is in like an inlet, and it's very beautiful if you see it. It's pretty cool.
South Central. It's like Central Alaska, but the very south.
It's as far south as you can go. I was looking to see if there was any kind of connection with the Black Pyramid, but it's pretty far away from it.
Yeah.
So the history of it was named after Nathaniel Portlock. Although he never came ashore there, they just kind of named it after him. They think he came ashore at another place called Cook Inlet. Tiny population. In the 40s, they did their first census, 31 people. Boomtown.
Well, it was goes by Port Chatham too, right?
So I don't know. I didn't see that. Is that true?
Yes, because it's Port Chatham Bay.
Maybe that's something we can check on.
If only we had a fact checker.
If we only had a fact checker. So the first census is in 1940. Last census is in 1980. But originally it dates all the way back to like the 1700s, where people used it for hunting, fishing, logging, and mining. But it was mainly the Portlock cannery, and salmon was the main thing that was processed there.
Yeah. Did you know that like there is like there's like an allotment for like bug parts and like canned salmon, like rat parts and bug parts. Like they have like there's like a threshold.
That's like hot dogs, right? That's like hot dogs, right?
Right.
You get so many rat tails are allowed per hot dog. Like you get like 0.15 rat tails.
You know, have you ever watched the show How It's Made?
Yes.
I used to watch that show, and they did an episode on hot dogs. Finally, right? And because it said before the show started, the entire episode was dedicated. You know, they usually do like 3 things. They did just hot dogs, and they were in the beginning. The disclaimer at the beginning was due to overwhelming demand. We are doing this episode because they didn't want to do it at all, so they just did they dedicated a whole show to how hot dogs are made.
So what did you say it was called? It was called Port Chatham?
Port Chatham and Port Chatham Bay.
And that is true.
Yeah, and it's these were the chromium mines around there too.
So Alaska's super rich in minerals. Have you been?
No, I've never been.
I'm obsessed with Alaska. I was obsessed with Hawaii. Like, I was really excited to go to Hawaii, but when I went there, I was like floored. And if it's anything like the history and like the wilderness, which I'm sure it is, Alaska's got to be awesome.
Yeah, I would love to go, but
I kicked around. Like I looked for places up there just to like see what it would be like to live up there for like a year or something. But I never did pull the trigger on it, and I kind of wish I would have. But it's cool.
We had a good friend of ours that moved there, and she became like a park ranger and stuff, and she lived up in Alaska forever.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
All over the place. And then she like moved down. She was in California too for a while, but she lived all over in Alaska. I don't know. She was kind of a wild spirit.
So anyway, this continues.
My brother's been there. My brother's been to Alaska.
Where'd he go?
Yeah, the Glacier National Park or some shit.
Oh yeah, so that's
that's
pretty cool.
So he went up there with my dad, but they went up there and he said, you know, he was like looking around and he sees a bald eagle and he's like, holy crap, bald eagle, you know. Then he looks over and he's like, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. He's like, all of a sudden the nostalgia wore off real quick. He goes, they're like robins up there. They're like everywhere. And then he was like telling somebody about it. Like, it's amazing how many bald eagles you got around here. And they were like, that's nothing. If you want to see a lot of bald eagles, go to the dump.
Really?
Yeah.
That's where they get all it.
It's sad. It's sad. America's national bird. When you go to the dump, it's like they're everywhere, and they're all like greasy from all the garbage and shit. Their feathers are all matted. It's like he said it was sad.
It's all fat.
Yeah, just living off waste, circling like seagulls. They sound like seagulls. You know, when they do them in movies, they use a red-tailed hawk's call.
Do they really?
Yeah, every time the comment, rah, you know, they
and they actually got like a bitch call.
It sounds like a seagull.
Mine.
Yeah. It's really weird. It's not anything like you'd think a majestic eagle would sound like. It's horrible.
That's funny. So anyway. Okay, so Portlock is running. It's a thing, and this happens for a long time. Then in like 1910, which Alaska's not even a state yet. What, 1959, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So it's 1910, and everything's cool. But then in the 20s, they start having all these mysterious deaths start happening. And they thought it was like simple. They thought it was just like, you know, part of the deal. Because you are in Alaska, you're cut off from everything. You know, there's not probably
59. 59.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, they think like, you know, it's Alaska. You know, there's logging accidents, hunting accidents. What are you going to do? But... yeah. But then
it's one of the highest rated, the highest death rates for careers is logging. I think it's number one.
Well, dude,
and that and the fishing up there. Same thing. Those are the two like highest death toll jobs.
I mean, yeah, like you see that. I mean, like Deadliest Catch, they go out of Dutch Harbor, which is
really
right, you know.
Really on the nose there.
Yeah, dude.
Deadliest job ever.
And then, I mean, every season they lose like 3 dudes, right? Yeah. They're like, Neil was the good one. We missed it. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
But it's starting to be like, the natives and then the townspeople, they're kind of like, they attach it to a Bigfoot creature. They're like, there's something up there that's hunting us when we go, you know, in to do hunting or we go, you know, to work or whatever. It wasn't coming into the town, but the way the town's laid out, it's like this clearing, and then there's a tree line, And then they had all these sort of houses and, you know, little processing plants, a post office.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this tree line. And it seems like every time people go into the tree line, it gets pretty hairy.
Yeah. And they say that he was like, their folklore was more that he was a man that lived with the people and decided he didn't want to live with the people anymore, and he moved into the forest and grew hair all over him. And
so they said that is true. A lot of people thought it was a serial killer.
Yeah.
But the nature by which all these people were killed was crazy, because they were had their limbs ripped off.
Yeah.
Wait
a minute. If he's humanoid, if it is a Bigfoot,
mm-hmm.
Isn't it serial killer?
It should be.
I mean,
isn't
he one of us?
Is he up there with Bundy though? I mean,
he's got a costume.
Is there an asterisk next to the stat?
Yeah, I think so.
There should.
I think you got to do something there. You got to put an asterisk.
He could be on the list, but you got to give him an asterisk.
Not the same species.
So it's not Tanakh?
I saw a pronunciation that I'll tell you it was non-T-E-E, like non-T nook.
Oh, non-T nook.
Non-T nook.
Okay. So anyway, he gets blamed for everything. They're like, it's that goddamn non-T nook. And so right away, in the 30s, the industry there, I guess it couldn't support a whole lot of people. So they people would come in and then they'd be like, yeah, fuck that. And they would leave. And they're like, what the hell is going on, you know? And it's because they would go into the woods, they'd get freaked out, and they're like, yeah, screw this. We're out.
Right.
And then the other people would come in, and there was this, constant flow of people coming in and out of the town, but the town kind of stayed under a 50 people population.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally around the 50s, late 40s, it comes into the 50s, there is only the post office.
Yeah.
And that person had to stay there. And when they stayed there, they're like, man, there's something that throws rocks at the post office. There's they hear stuff at night. And they finally closed the post office down. And that's when it officially becomes a ghost town. But I never did get an exact number of people that died.
Yeah.
It
was they didn't give an exact number. They just said dozens, I think.
Right. So here's just a quick. In 1917, 2 hunters were lost. So Ben Sweezy and Bill Weaver, they were missing from Seward, and they were somewhere near Portlock. In 21, another guy, Alberto Pecca, he was scared off by a creature that he's kind of the first one that says, he saw it, and he supposedly chased it away. But this thing ended up punching him in the chest, which I could imagine taking a shot from Bigfoot would have hurt. It would probably break your sternum.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some missing gold miners, again in the 20s. In the 30s, there were several people that had the same sort of thing that happened to Petka. They had blows to their chest and head. One guy's name was Andrew Camlock. He was beaten with logging equipment, which
it's a weird explanation of that. It was like
he got hit with the log splitter. Because
I don't know what it was. It was big, whatever he was working with, and there was a crane there apparently too, and it had blood on it, and he was nowhere near it. So I don't know if they were talking about the crane's like mast or what. I don't know what they were talking about. They just said heavy logging equipment.
The definition of irony would be like you work with all this heavy equipment that's super dangerous, and then I guess you get beat in the head with it, right?
By a squat. Right.
I think that's irony.
Or instead of the tree killing you, the machinery does. It's they did come across footprints that were 18 inches. And there's other people still at this time. They see, this, it's a Bigfoot or an untook or however you say it. And this continues all the way until everybody's gone. So then it kind of has a little bit of a folklore. But the town is closed. And then in 1968, somebody goes there, and it's a goat hunter, and he was tracking some game, and he wasn't sure what it was, but he felt like he was getting followed, and he was chased off by this entity. And that's what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, there was this functioning port city in Alaska on the south central tip of Alaska that for all intents and purposes was working fine. Everything became like a little town that they had this cannery. People had jobs. There were a bunch of different kind of trades, logging, mining. Couldn't sustain a lot of people, but enough.
And then all of a sudden, too many people saw too much weird stuff, and they're just like, we're out. Thank you. Portlock, Alaska. I'm going to try my hand at Anchorage.
Yeah, it was seemingly overnight.
Yeah, I hear they have a McDonald's. So I'm cool with that. And that's what it is. And then it became like this ghost town. And today, all that's left is these stories and one shack, which is believed to be the post office.
Yeah, there was also reports of a ghostly white-faced woman screaming and moaning and wearing a black dress and levitating, and she'd appear out of the cliffs.
So I wasn't sure.
Just to add to it, you just got to double down.
I wasn't going to go there.
Double down.
But you're right. That's in all the stories, because as soon as you say that, it's
it loses a little credibility.
There's a movie called Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
And he did the 7 babies are born and they take one. And he's doing an interview, and the guy's like, is it true that you think aliens could be responsible for taking your baby? He's like, oh, please don't print that. My wife's liable to lose all hope if you print that.
Great movie.
That's a great movie.
I'll be taking these Huggies and any cash you got in the register.
So yeah, that's it. Other than some moonshiners in the 20s, that's kind of what it is. It's very remote. It's very wooded. It's very much
a peninsula surrounded by water.
Right. So, Portlock, Alaska. It started off as a cannery. It was a mining town. They were doing, logging, and it sustained a small group of people. and people got freaked out one by one. They started leaving. Other people came. They got freaked out. Other people got dismembered, killed, punched in the chest by a Sasquatch like creature enough that finally everybody's like, that's it. Even the U.S. Post Office is like, fuck this place, and they leave. And now it's abandoned.
Started carrying beef jerky on them, but that didn't work. Got the fuck out of there.
Messing with Sasquatch. Those are great commercials. So, why'd they leave Portlock, Alaska? Was it because of the Squatch? Because of Nanti Nook? I don't know. So let's get into some facts. Okay, so the first thing we should say is that right around the time that it becomes abandoned, Alaskan Highway 1, which, I don't know a lot about that highway, but that's not Pacific Coast Highway, right? Because that's Highway 1.
Well, if you're looking at a map of,
I know it can't. I know it's like, right.
Kenai Peninsula,
right? Because it's obviously waterlogged, but like, is that the beginning of it or something?
Well, there's no. It's if you look where Portlock is, it's in that peninsula, but that peninsula at the very end has its own little peninsula that sticks off, and Portlock's at the end of that little peninsula. Highway 1 goes from Homer all the way up into mainland Alaska, and it's like they purposely built it as far away from Portlock as they could.
So that's one.
Because it goes down, that follows the coast, the northern coast of that peninsula.
So that's one theory is that the Alaska 1 was built opposite of the town, and that's why it's abandoned. Like Route 66 is abandoned. But Alaska 1 is its own thing. So it has nothing to do with PCH. Highway 1, Alaska 1, I guess would be a state highway. It's its own thing. So
it's long. Okay. It goes on for a while,
but it is. You're right. You're right. And it goes like right to the end of Portlock, but it's across. It's opposite of Portlock. So a lot of people think just geographically, because of the way that the highway went, it just didn't make sense to go to Portlock because you needed ferries and seaplanes sometimes. And when you could just drive,
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think that just because where the highway was, that's what happened. So
yeah, sure. I mean, it's going to bring in. It's easier to trade your commerce. I mean, especially if you're a port town and your big stock and trade is fish and logging.
Right.
You're going to want to get to a road as quick as possible. So nobody wants to take some offshoot route and back roads, hours out of their way just to make a stop at Portlock when everybody can relocate and make more money off that northern coast of the peninsula.
Right. You're basically in the same spot, just across the water,
Yeah.
It's not. So the other thing is, so these attacks,
which isn't uncommon. I mean, that's happened across the United States. Railroads did it.
That's what Route 66.
Yeah,
it was the only way. It was the only way to get to California. And then when Eisenhower came in and built, the highway system, and then 10 was created, and that goes straight across the bottom of the United States. Like I could pick up 10 here,
Yeah.
So when that was created, like Route 66 was like, you don't need it. You know,
Yeah.
there was no need for it. Now and all these towns.
Yeah, and anything that was on Route 66 died off too.
They all died unless they're close to 10. Unless they're close to the 10, there's a reason why you would have to take it for like a wreck or traffic or whatever. It just dies out. So you have these attacks. What's attack? Okay, well, the obvious one is like grizzlies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
polar bear, grizzly.
So are polar bears that far south?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I like to think. I like to be cautious.
There's that riddle: why don't polar bears eat penguins? Because penguins are in Antarctica, and polar bears are in the Arctic.
I know. We were raised on a cartoon that told us otherwise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Chili Willy.
Chili Willy.
I showed my kids that. They like Chili Willy. But
I showed my kid that, and he was like, polar bears and penguins don't live near each other, Dad.
This is dumb, Dad.
And I'm like, Jesus, he was like half the age when I was watching it.
So, like, grizzlies, have you seen Grizzly Man?
No.
You haven't? Oh, that's right up your alley, dude. So, Grizzly Man's the documentary about a guy who lived in LA.
I know what it's about.
Okay,
I've seen.
So he was a grizzly bear enthusiast, and he used to go up there, and that was his thing. He would film these grizzly bears. Well, one year he stayed too long, and when he stayed too long, they get right before hibernation. So before hibernation, there's kind of like so much food. They're just chowing down, you know what I mean?
Mm.
But then when hibernation starts to come around, the salmon stop swimming, everything stops. So like that's how they know it's time to like lock it down. Mm-hmm. So they kind of try to get like a few good meals in, and then they let they call it the season.
Yeah.
So and that thing, there's like video of it, but they don't show it. That he had his video camera rolling, and this bear just because grizzlies are no joke. They're huge. So compared to like a black bear, I think black bears get to be like 500, 600 pounds, whereas a grizzly can be like up to like 1,200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the fact checker comes in handy. There are no polar bears this far south.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say that they're moose is another, because I've never seen a moose, but I've seen enough videos of people that see moose. Like there was a guy in Maine that had like a Ring camera, and he goes out to start his car, and he's like, "Jesus Christ!" And,
they're it's like it's like a Clydesdale with antlers.
Yeah, it basically chases him into his house, and this thing's giant, dude. Like at the what do they call that? At the shoulders. What do they call that for a horse? Is it quarters? Hands. It's quarters. Is that like?
It's hands high.
Okay,
how many hands high they are?
So okay. So this thing is like a moose could be like taller than you, just at its shoulders. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean it could be a moose, but at the risk of sounding terrible, the moose knuckles leave a certain track, right? This thing left like 18-inch footprints. I was wondering if you caught that. It left 18-inch footprints.
Yeah.
Also, the nature by which like these things, like the people were killed, like for instance, getting beat with logging equipment, is not a characteristic of a moose or a grizzly.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. Grizzlies, they get to like 600 pounds. Still a very big,
Right.
very big thing to, you're talking about, not only is it a wild animal, which if it was 200 pounds, it's 10 times stronger than you, right? A wild animal.
Yeah.
Anything that you encounter that's like a wild animal that's 200 pounds is 10 times stronger than you as a human at 200 pounds. This thing's 600 pounds. So you're talking like, 30 times as strong as you are. Like one swipe, it just, rips your inside. So
like you said, the moose are big too. I mean, if they can pretty much do what they want to you. They're big. They get up, like we were talking about. A hand is how you measure horses, and according to our fact checker, that's 4 inches is a hand. Okay. And then, but I do know that I think moose are like 7. I remember this. They're like 7 foot at the shoulder,
right?
And they can weigh up to like 1,600 pounds, dude. It's crazy how big they get.
It's nuts, right?
Yeah, that's insane. That's a full foot, or that, most people. Well, I guess not average. Average is what?
But that's
5'9".
Like, is it?
I think 5'9" is average height of a person. So.
Yeah, but that's still like.
I'm 6'4", and that thing's shoulders are over my head.
Right. And there's that's like insane. Even if you see a horse, a horse, even like a small horse, god damn, dude, they're giant. That's a lot to deal with. And you think about like the Native Americans just jumping on those motherfuckers bareback. the balls on those guys.
I got a story about that. Okay. One time, this girl that my brother was dating a long time ago, she was a real hillbilly.
Okay.
And she's like, we used to have horses when we were growing up. We didn't have horses. My aunt and uncle did in the house I live in now. They used to board horses, so we grew up riding horses.
Okay.
And we were just talking about it one day, and she was like, "You want to go ride a horse?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." She's like, "Okay." And she's like, "I got to stop and get reins." We're in my grandpa's old pickup truck. She drives out to this cow field. She was like, "This is my horse, but I couldn't keep him, so they're taking care of him for me. And they just leave him in the field with the cattle, right? So he hasn't been rode in a while." We pull into this field, right? And she gets out. She's like, "Come on." And we get out. We get in the bed of the truck, and we're standing up. And she's like whistling and shit. And all of a sudden, this monster fucking horse comes out of nowhere, and it is like, "Who's in my field and what are you doing here?" type attitude when it came out. You know what I mean? And he's coming up to the truck like fast, but he's kind of doing it like that, like almost sideways.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to be intimidating and shit.
Yeah.
And he comes up, and Mary's like, she's sticking her head out, and he's timid, and he's not, and she's got is this bridle. And when he gets close, she slips it over his head real quick and puts reins on him, and he kind of runs around for a minute, and he comes back, and then she just jumps off the back of the truck and lands on his back and starts fucking kicking him in the side. And
Get the fuck out of here.
I'm not kidding you. She must have been 115 pounds. She jumped on the back of his horse, and it's bucking like a bronco. And it was insane to me. And she rides it up close enough to the truck and jumps back off the truck and still has a hold of the reins. She was like, "Your turn."
Yeah, right.
And I was like, there's no way I could let this little girl jump on this horse and me not do it. And I was like, fuck it, I gotta do it.
You did it?
Yeah, I jumped on that horse, and he did not want to be rode. He didn't want to at all. It was.
What happened? You rode it
out? It was insane. I rode it out. Yeah. It was like, I don't think I could have done it if he had never been ridden before. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
He, like, at some point he was kind of like, fuck it. All right. You win. You know what I mean?
You broke him.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty wild though, man. I was like, because there was no chance in hell I would have even thought about doing that had she not done it. Not a chance in hell would be like, I'm going to jump on this monster that clearly doesn't want me on him.
Yeah, I mean, when people do that, just very similar story. I was at Dale Hollow, and there's cliffs, and I was looking over, and it's like, I don't know, maybe 30 feet or whatever. And I'm like,
that's up there.
And this kid's like, hey, you gonna go, man? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going. All right. He's like 10. He's like, well, could you? And he kind of like waved me out of the way. And he fucking balls out, just runs right past me, and jumps with his like life jacket in the air, throws his life jacket out. And I'm like, God damn it. And I'm like 20. I'm like 20. Like some little 10-year-old made me look like a bitch. I get it. You gotta do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
You just gotta jump on and hope you don't die. That was scary, man. That was a scary experience, dude. It was like, oh my God. And then like when he started mellowing out, I'm like, I'm doing this. You're my bitch. You know what
I mean? Okay, so it's possibility of serial killer.
It's a possibility.
So Alaska.
Not a lot of forensics going on in that part of the world at that time.
So I think Washington has the most serial killers.
The state?
Yeah. I don't know that. But I believe it's Washington. I could be wrong, like overall, but it feels like Alaska is
apparently it's New York.
Okay, but here's the caveat. Okay, here's the thing with that. Oh, they only have one right now. They only have one serial killer. Huh. Okay. That's probably mob related. Right? Same with California. You got cartel mafia. Same with Texas. Same with Illinois. Ohio coming in, that's us. But okay. But maybe I'm wrong. I guess the way I would think of it, I guess it's because I saw that movie Insomnia. That's why which is a really good movie. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. When he's chasing him. He finally figures out who it is, and it's Robin Williams, and Al Pacino's chasing him, and Al Pacino falls in between the logs. They're floating down the river.
Mm-hmm.
So good. So yeah, Alaska's not even on the list. They got one.
Yeah, they're like the number one in suicides.
Yeah, so
I mean, people could be going in the woods and offing themselves.
So when I was a bartender in California, there was a guy that came in all the time, and he was a graphic artist, and one of his accounts was Carnival Cruise, and they would go to Alaska and shoot the Carnival Cruise, basically like their media package, right?
Yeah.
So he would stay up there, and it was a place where the sun didn't go down at certain times of the year, right?
You're right.
And then other parts of the year when they would shoot there, it was like dark. So it was like that 6 o'clock sun for like 2 months. And he asked the local, he said, how long you been here? And the guy's like, I've been here 30 winters, like, and he's like, that guy measured his time in winters. So like, that's gotta be, like that. And I don't know where they fall into that. But that's probably part of it. People are, I think up there, it gets weird, right? Like I watched that show Alone. I watched that show. What's the one with Sue?
Yeah, you want to feel like less of a man? Watch Alone.
Yeah. Oh, dude, Alone. even the women are badass.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter. The people on that show are like next level.
When they showed like the beginning people, you're like, oh, it's definitely that guy, that guy, that guy, and that guy. They're making it. And then 2 days in, that guy's like, I got a thorn in my foot. And then,
yeah. And
it's always
I think I'm having a heart attack.
It's always the women that take all their time and make a little house. And they're like, I forage for stuff. And, and they stockpile.
That lasts for so long, though. They're always like, I can only eat so many more berries, berry paste, berry jerky.
So back to the moose. The guy shot the moose. He shot a moose like the second day, and he was just eating moose. Like,
but it was weird. They said,
he lost so much weight.
He was still losing weight because it's not a fatty meat.
Right, it's so lean, and he's like, and so he was dropping so much weight that he had to catch a fish, and he ended up catching like a salmon that has like that fat on it.
Yeah, it's got a lot of fat.
And he stored it, and a wolverine got it.
Yeah, they eat the belly out. Yeah,
and that was like, spoiler alert, but that was like, he's like, I'm done. He's like, I'm done because I lost too much weight. He's like, I can keep going. He's like, but they're gonna say I lost too much weight. And when they came and got him, they're like, you won.
Yeah.
So it could have been a serial killer. It could have been somebody hunting people. And the only problem with that is it's so remote. You would have to have some kind of base of operations to you can't just, where are you living,
Yeah, I think in that part of the world at that time, you'd be a little more bold in your actions too.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be as secretive. I don't know, you wouldn't think, you wouldn't have to be that secretive.
That John Mulaney talks about robbing banks and killing people in the 20s.
He'd shoot their name in the wall.
Yeah. He's like, what, were bullets free back then?
They got dressed up and shit.
Yeah. It's like, as long as you weren't at the scene, he'd be like, hey, there's a pool of the killer's blood right there. He's like, ew, gross, mop it up.
Mop it up, yeah.
Okay, so it could have been a serial killer. The other thing is, what we go back to, that type of work is super dangerous. Like everything that these people are doing in Portlock, Alaska is up there with the most dangerous job.
It is. It's like it's like the 5 for 5 right there. They hit most of the top deadliest jobs.
So like, if you think about, the guy that got beat with his logging equipment. So I do know this. I had 5 acres. I put a bunch of branches. I made like a Burning Man pile, right?
Yeah.
And I was very careless with how I stack shit. So one thing I did was I started throwing branches on. I tried to make like a pyramid. Well, one of the things I did was some of the branches, I put the big part up and the branches down. Well, I created like tension and I cut a piece of a branch I was cutting kindling. So I was making like a base of the fire. Mm-hmm. And I had all these giant branches. And one of them it had so much tension on it because of the weight of the branch. And I cut another piece of the branch for kindling. And when I did that, it like went off of its balance. And when it did that, it released a branch and it hit me right in the mouth. Like this branch hit, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I have to get chompers now. Like I thought it knocked out all my teeth. Like it was that, I had to get stitches. It was like horrible. It really hurt, like really bad. And so when they were talking about the guy got beat with his logging equipment, it's possible that like something got jammed and like swung around and hit him. Something like that. And I don't know exactly how to explain that, except that you're dealing with like you're on your own. You're out there. You're working with some pretty primitive like machinery, and sometimes things get stuck and it works against you, and and it swings the wrong way and it messes up your body, and possibly somehow he was using some kind of equipment. It got jammed and maybe swung around and hit him, and that's why it made it look like he got beat with like some logging equipment.
Anything could have happened with that logging equipment.
All of it is like, it's all pressure operated. It's all very like Flintstones like technology, where it's like,
if you ever watch there's like there's shows about logging in Alaska, and if you watch them, their equipment fucking nearly kills them all the time. They roll that shit.
Even like, actually, a friend of ours, he was working on the county road crew, and a big tree had fallen, and they were like, rolling it onto a forklift. So they had like 10 guys. They're like 1, 2, and they went to roll it, and his shirt got stuck, and they didn't make it to the forklift. It rolled back on his finger, and he like lost like part of his finger, and he kind of had this like hook index finger, and he's a guy we both know. He had a hook index finger, and he ended up quitting the road gang after that. But he was a baseball player. He was really good. Couldn't play baseball anymore because his right hand. And we would play spades, and he would take that hook finger and be like, "It's your call," and he'd like whip it around like Captain Hook. Your call, like on spades. Right. But yeah, but you're dealing with like super heavy weight, and that's a very dangerous, like all those jobs are very dangerous. So like, that's possible that's an explanation too. But I think we hit a bunch of facts. I mean, did I miss something?
No, I think that's it. There was, I know that the story gained traction back in 2009.
That's the other thing. Time.
There was a woman that named Melania Kell.
Okay.
She did an interview for the Homer Tribune in 2009.
Okay.
And she was the one that was saying the entire town evacuated because of the murderous Nanticoke. So that was what kind of sparked the whole thing, really.
Because I can tell you,
from what I got,
like I've always say, like I'm into all this stuff, and when we heard like Bob Lazar, I knew Bob Lazar since the 90s.
Right.
I've never heard of this until recently.
Yeah.
This is like a real.
Yeah, the story's old, and that's why I think, because it just took a while for it to start circulating, because it, like I said, she did this interview in 2009, and the reason why she was being interviewed was because her and her family were residents of Portlock, and they had moved, and when people had like heard about this, the rumors of this, they went down there to interview people, and she was the one that got interviewed. She was the one that told the reporter that that's why they all left. When she was young, they left because Bigfoot was killing everybody.
Yeah. All right.
And they ran out of beef jerky.
All right. Let's get into what we think. Okay, well, why don't you take it?
All right. I'm going to ruin everything.
Go ahead.
All right. The woman I mentioned that did the interview in 2009, Melania Kell. Okay. There's a guy whose name is Darren Harp Daddy Smith. He's a musician and he's a Bigfoot enthusiast. But he's got a buddy of his that plays the blues, and he was sitting in his at this bar, and they were putting together this event that they were doing, this big, like a music festival type thing. It was called the Harp Daddy Backcountry Blues Jam or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
And he's going over his headliners, and one of the lead singers or one of the lead guitarists for one of the bands, he remembers him talking about growing up in Nanwalek, which is the village where a lot of the people that left or fled moved to.
Right, which is closed.
So he asked him about it. And he said, "Oh, if you want to talk to somebody, talk to my mom. If you want to piss her off, talk to her about Sasquatch or something like that."
Yeah.
So he gets on the phone with her and he does this interview with her. Turns out she is the cousin of Melania Kell.
Okay.
She was actually there at the interview working as her interpreter.
Okay.
Because they're natives and she only spoke the native language.
Right.
And which is called Sugston or something like that.
Okay.
And she says that her cousin, who was doing the interview, got tired of her cousin was being interviewed and we were sitting with her, was what she said. And Melania kind of made up a story because she was getting tired of people asking if this story was true. So she made up the story about how Bigfoot was killing people. It wasn't true. Everybody knows that. But it was not our place to say nothing. We all know, but we couldn't just stop her. Because you can't tell your elders they are wrong. So she was her older cousin, so she couldn't step in and say anything, but they sat and laughed about it after the reporter left. You know, that it was funny that they made up this story about this Bigfoot killing a bunch of people, and that was the local legend. Now, to be fair, Sally, who was this guy's mom, Sally said that they did have this non-Tinook legend in their in the village of Portlock. This was a thing that they knew about. You don't go out when it's foggy out, because he'll get you, you know, and that he's, you know, so she said he was killing people, but if you go and look, you can't find any proof of these murders. The only one that has a viable story to it, that has actual proof that it happened, was the logger that got killed by his equipment.
Right.
And according to her, Bigfoot was killing all kinds of people. People were going in the woods missing. Hunters, people from their family would go out and not return. This is the story she told the reporter. And it was all made up as far as the murders are concerned and why the people left the village. The reason that they left was because of the building of that highway, the Route 1.
Okay.
Was because that most people left was because of to get closer to
make any sense.
The commerce.
It didn't make any sense.
And so, but there was these stories because the Nancy Nook story existed, and because people started telling tall tales about Nancy Nook, people came asking questions, you know, and then she got sick of the people always coming and asking the questions because people started putting two and together. They're like, wait, is that why you guys evacuated? You know, so the story kind of grew outside of their area more.
Okay, so then my obvious question is, why is there even a Nancy Nook to begin with?
And I think it's like any other Bigfoot story, you know. Sometimes it's your mind wandering. Sometimes it's
okay.
You
That's
know.
fine. But like they have an obvious like the natives. The natives there, like Grant, everything you said, totally plausible. But like the natives there, they have a name for it.
Mm-hmm. They also have a name for a giant serpent that lives in the sky that carved out fucking glaciers and shit like that. I mean,
so
we're about to celebrate a mystical dude in a red suit that comes down your chimney and puts presents under your tree.
Where we live, we have a family of Billies that have a lot of folklore behind them about all kinds of stuff that they've done.
Yeah.
But they exist.
Yeah.
They exist. They're a real group. They're a real family.
Right. But like I said, Santa Claus is based on a true story.
Sure.
So.
Doubtful.
I don't believe this at all. Like, not one part of it.
Okay.
I just I think you're talking about old tribal legends that got mixed into the modern age fucking culture.
So you're like, it didn't happen.
People wanted a story, so this chick gave them a story, and it blew up from there.
So you're saying none of this happened?
No, I don't think there's an Nancy Nook. I don't think.
Okay.
I think there was a port town and a highway with more routes to get the commerce going. Came up and canceled it.
Okay.
Because there's just not a lot of Alaska living's hard living.
Well, I was gonna say
you can't just live anywhere. Not everybody can live anywhere in Alaska.
So I'm not gonna surprise you here. I'm usually the believer. However, so you're saying none of this happened. I think all of these incidents happened, but I think probably the reason people left is because, you know, man, when you're around bad luck,
yeah,
like okay, yeah. even if you haven't been there from 1910 to 1949 when everybody left, but if you're just around and you've been in that area 20 years, you know, you worked there, and you're like, fucking Jim was up there, it looks like he got beat to death with his fucking, even if there's a logical explanation, that's like dumb luck. And then, you know, another guy, you know, it looks like his limbs got torn off, and that would happen to be a grizzly bear. Yeah, that still sucks. So there's a movie called The Ghost in the Darkness. I don't know if you ever seen that?
Yeah.
It's Val Kilmer. He's in Africa, and he is an engineer, and he's building a bridge. And he has all these laborers working, right? And there is this lion that is like this alpha lion, and it is basically at night going into the camp, dragging people out.
There's
of their
two
tent.
of them,
right? And they're killing people. So like, that's a real. First of all, that's a real story.
The real story. They're actually maneless lions, male lions, and one of them was dark colored, and one of them was light colored, which gave them the name The Ghost in the Darkness. Their bodies are stuffed in the Chicago Museum.
Okay, but like that was like
I've seen them. I've been there, like seen them.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was very supernatural at the time that people thought that was like, supernatural happening.
Yeah.
But it's actually a very natural phenomenon. And you're right, dude. There's it's like that movie, There's a Million Ways to Die in the West. Have you seen that?
Yes.
That's a really good movie.
Take your hat off, boy. That's $1 bill.
But Alaska is that. Alaska is, so we were literally on break just talking about how I cut my hand doing floors. That was a problem. When I did that was a problem because I hit an artery. I hit like a major artery. So I cut my tendon, but I hit the artery in your wrist that they kill themselves with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed it and I held it, and dummy, I went to go grab my phone. My thumb didn't work because I cut that tendon. And when I did that, it literally shot across my dining room. Mm-hmm. Like, when I say it shot like 8 feet, it shot 8 feet. And to this day, there's spots of blood that you can see under the stain of the wood. So like, okay, but here's the thing. I was 5 minutes from a hospital, and even when I went to the hospital, the guy's like, I can do it, man. I got to go home and get my stuff. And I'm like, no. Do not be a hero. Sew this up so that it's fine, so that I'm not going to die, and I will find a hand surgeon in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. However, if you're in Alaska, that shit doesn't exist. So whether it's a moose or a grizzly or this Sasquatch thing, you don't have time to, like, you can't just say, okay, well, I'll go to the hospital. There's no hospital, especially then. Yeah. Nor do they have the technology to even deal with you at that point. Well,
here's the thing. They're Nanticoke, that they, according to Sally, who's a tribal member, according to her, that you're not going to find him. He's too fast. You can't find him in the woods. He'll run away from you.
I love that about him.
And then she also said, if you follow him, he will hide, and he could turn into different animals. You can chase him, and he'll chase him, and suddenly he disappears behind a tree. And when you get close to see him, all you see is a mouse.
He's a shapeshifter.
He's a shapeshifter that changes into different animals.
Okay, so
and he makes you feel sad for them, so you don't touch them and you leave them alone, like mice and stuff.
So the other problem I have is that in the history of Squatch,
yeah,
they're not angry except on the beef jerky commercial.
Yeah,
right.
That's it.
Squatch. I will take that there is an animal that is trying to stay away from everybody. That actually makes a lot of sense, because like that is very like nature.
Well, I covered it in the Mount St. Helens episode.
Exactly.
We did. There's a lot of large animals that have been discovered, even primates that have been discovered very recently. I think it was, the one orangutan was discovered in like 2017 or 18. Yeah. That's a 800-pound fucking animal that nobody knew existed.
I mean, here where I live in South Carolina, the Carolina Panthers, those were discovered in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's why they're called the Panthers, because forever they're like, hey man, there's giant cats. There's giant fucking pumas? And everybody's like, no, shut it.
Yeah.
They're like, no, dude, I go out hunting for deer and boar, and there's fucking pumas. And they're like, no. Well, that's what the Carolina Panthers are. So yeah, I totally agree. I like, something that is like trying to stay away, that makes sense. Something that's like completely on the offensive, and then you try to hunt it, and I don't believe that. Like I believe the Mount St. Helen thing more than this one, because at least the Mount St. Helen thing, like there was like a group of people, they're like they exist, and that guy, you know, he was sad. He was trying to find his buddy.
He could talk his language.
Yeah, and he's like, "Are we getting on the Toyota?" And then
Yeah,
he's like,
got that Harry and the Henderson's face.
Yeah, right. But this seems like sensationalism for a TV show.
Well, there apparently there was a show that aired on the History Channel called it was about the hairy man of Port Chatham, and according to the guy I was talking about before, the Heart Man, one of the stars of that show told him that they never actually visited the area. They opted for a shoot just off the road system, staging wood knocks and tree breaks for dramatic effect.
Always.
And so that they never made a season 2. So
I was just watching that before we did this, and I don't usually like to watch other podcasts, so I didn't. I was watching the Discovery Plus thing, and they were in Portlock, Alaska, and then it's these guys, and they're all like, well, they tried to set up camp, and it's cold and whatever, and they're like, well, there's the old post office, we could go sleep in there. And then they go sleep in there, and then of course, I don't know, the cameraman, there's like a full crew, right?
Yeah.
So the cameramen are creating the whole dramatic. See, it sucks that I lived in LA for so long, because you know how production works. You're
right.
Like,
I know what you're doing.
Dude, there's fucking a sound guy. There's like 5 other dudes. It's not just you 4 guys. There's like, you have at least 9 other people, plus the producer, plus like you have craft services. There's a table with roast beef sandwiches. Like, you're not camping, right? The union won't allow it, right? So like, so they go and they sleep, and of course it's like, what was that? Yeah, they wake up. What the fuck was that? Yeah, that beep, 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 beep. Everybody's cussing or whatever, and commercial break.
Yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, dude, that's part of it. That's what it is. It's a pitch. They're pitching you a show that obviously sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't believe like true pioneers aren't leaving. Like, because, you know, people settled Washington, that is like where most Bigfoot sightings happen, you know. People settled California, and there's fucking rattlesnakes and mountain lions. Like, people settled all this shit in the United States, which we have a crazy diverse, you know, terrain. I just don't believe that like a group of people get scared off. If anything, you're going to attract people that want to kill it.
You're talking about a tribe of people that have had this lore for God knows how long in their community.
Right.
Like they lived with it. Like they're like, yeah, just don't go out when it's foggy. Right. You know, carry beef jerky in your pocket, whatever. And so they, you know what I mean? They were like lived with it. So there's no reason for them to pull up camp, even if that was the case. Like, you would think that they would be like, no, that's just Nanticoke. You just gotta not go out when it's foggy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I do. Yeah.
How could it not scare them off for however long, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere everybody's scared all at once and they all leave? So that part of the story doesn't even make sense. So even if there was a real Bigfoot killing people leaving the town because of it, doesn't make a lot of sense if he's always been around. You know?
And so I've been up to like Northern California, Oregon border, and it's remote, dude. It's remote. And I could see, the elements get the best of you, especially without technology. You have you're by yourself up there, or you got 20 people with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking freaky, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, there's nobody coming to help you.
Yeah.
It's you. And yeah, probably, but like back to what you were saying, it sounds like it wasn't even that. It was like this was completely manufactured as of late, which makes a lot of sense because I've never heard of it. And the whole reason we started this podcast is because I'm like, hey, there's all this stuff. There's all these like endless stories we could do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they keep happening every day. There's still bizarre disappearances. There's still like animals and cryptids that people don't know about. There's still like these phenomenons and things. We have like an endless podcast of stuff we could talk about.
Yeah, I just heard there was a story about how it's possible that saber-toothed tigers, that are still alive in South America, and that they might be what the legend of Chupacabra came from. Right. Because apparently there was a boat full of zoo animals, and there was a breeding pair. So I think it was one or two breeding pairs of tigers on there.
We're doing that.
Tasmanian tiger, not saber-tooth, but Tasmanian tiger.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
they were the Tasmanian tigers, and the ship wrecked near just offshore somewhere.
So my mom, that's how I got obsessed with the Tasmanian tiger. My mom told me something very similar to that. And this is like in the 90s when we only had encyclopedias,
Right.
And,
everything was true until you could get to the fucking library
you get 2 paragraphs. That's it. That's TA.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we did it. I think we busted it.
But what's it called? It's called a thylacine. Yeah, we can definitely do that. We
should do that next.
Yeah, because
that's my favorite animal. I show my kids. There's fucking cool. Joe Rogan did a little thing on it.
Well, there was a guy that it was probably on that show you're talking about, Joe Rogan, where he has this guy on. That guy, I follow him. He finds super rare animals. Yeah. And he's found a couple animals that were believed to be extinct. So he's the one that brought this story, and he is going to go after them.
So we'll do this one. I think we should do that next. But in Tasmania is very similar to Alaska, except it's a different climate. Yeah. So it's very thick, wooded area, but they think they found several, not just one. They think they found and the reason was like the English came and they blamed them for killing sheep, so they just like exterminated them. Mm-hmm. That's why there's no more Tasmanian tigers. And the last one was in captivity in like the 30s. But like, this is a little bit different than that. That was actually a real thing. This is like kind of a legend where they try to attribute like this thing with Portlock and why it's abandoned. But I think it's a little bit more simpler than that. The highway was actually across the water or the bay or whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't make sense to be in Portlock anymore. And then you have like this undeveloped settlement, and it's much more interesting as a story and to sell as a production to say Killer Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. But I think we cracked it.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen at all. I'm not even going to say doubtful. I don't think it happened at all.
I don't think so either. I don't think one part of it did.
Okay, so we did it.
I don't know. Bigfoot's one thing, but a shape-shifting Bigfoot.
Right.
We're really taking it to, and we can't forget there's like a spooky woman in a black dress. I mean,
that I didn't even want to say that because I knew right. Like I, I don't like psychics, and ghosts are like a close second. Like it's hard for me to believe in ghosts. It's like I know energy never leaves and all that. Fine.
yeah.
But still, it's like when you start throwing the ghost out there, it's a whole different thing.
Right.
All right. Well, so this didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
All right. Well, I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
And this is Everything That's Weird. For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to contribute, please go to our Patreon page at Everything That's Weird. Check us out on Instagram at Everything That's Weird or Twitter at ETWPod. Or if you'd like to send us an old-fashioned email, go to everythingthat'sweird@gmail.com.